Hey, hello everyone. So this is a review for the Readathon that I am participating in. It is hosted by Michael from Catalyst Reads, and basically throughout the year, for different months, we are rereading books for different things such as nonfiction, your favorite series, a book you read in high school, stuff like that. So rereading different things. So I decided to reread, of course, one of my absolute favorite books from a series, and that is The Hunger Games, which is the first book in the Hunger Games trilogy. So, in order to help me do reviews a little bit better, I have decided to get myself a little notebook. Actually, this is just going to be in my YouTube notebook, basically. So, anything like tag questions, review things that I want to go through, will all be in here. So if I look down, I'm sorry, like I can't like script things and remember them. So sorry for looking down. But basically, I have done this, and what it is so I'm writing down plot, character, tropes, basically stuff like that. So here goes. So what is the plot? Well, The Hunger Games is a young adult dystopian, basically, that takes place in a futuristic North America called Panem. Basically, years into the future, like many dystopian and post-apocalyptic stories, the world has been destroyed through wars and natural disasters, but instead of rising again as the land of the free that we know, the democracy that is the United States, we are now 12, formerly 13 districts ruled by a capital. Instead of being fair and equal, the capital is run by the extremely wealthy. So how do we get down to 12 districts? Well, each district is responsible for different things. The main protagonist in our story lives in District 12, which is the coal mining district. District 4, I believe, was fishing, and then there's like textiles and transportation, electricity, stuff like that. Oh, District 11 is agriculture, I believe, because there is a character that is from District 11 that's like a favorite character, like at least of me and a lot of other people. So basically what happens is that the districts each are made to work very hard, and the best of their work, the best outcomes, what they get, the best, of their products and everything, are shipped to the capital for the wealthy and the powerful to enjoy. While the poor people, the districts are basically much, much poorer than the capital. The people who are actually doing the work are left basically with the scraps, and they're left to fight for food. They don't have enough money to support their families, etc. So what happens is that they go into a rebellion, basically. They rebel against the capital, and they were led by the 13th district. Of course, the capital being much more powerful, they were able to defeat the rebels, the districts, and destroy the 13th district, leaving 12. So as punishment for their rebellion, aka not knowing their place according to the capital, they created what was called the Hunger Games, which says that in punishment for that, each district will offer up a boy and a girl between the ages of 12 and 18, so 24 tributes, and they will basically participate in a televised fight to the death. So, who are our characters? Well, the main character, and it is told from first person point of view, and it is in present tense. And I really love that because we get to take the journey um, with this character. We get to get into a character's head and know their world. So, our main character is Katniss Everdeen. She lives in District 12 with her mother and her younger sister Prim, or Primrose. Her best friend and her hunting partner is Gale. And um, so some of the other important characters would be Peeta, who will be the male tribute for District 12 in the Hunger Games. Um, what else? I wrote this all down. So basically, Katniss, she lives, like I said, with her mother and her sister. Her father died a few years beforehand in a mining accident. And in fact, in the book, she says there was nothing left of him to bury. So because of this, her mother had gone into a deep depression, which left Katniss basically to take care of the family. So she is sort of skilled in hunting because their world is a little different. They don't have stores exactly to go to because the government really does not care about them. I mean, first of all, they take their children and make them sacrifice them for entertainment. So they really don't care about what happens to their people. And the book opens up on Reaping Day, which is the day where they draw the names for the children who will be in the Hunger Games. And even though Katniss has taken out Tesserae, which I will explain that when I get to the themes and everything, and her name is in there more, it is actually her little sister who is in her first year of the Reaping who gets called. And Prim is pretty much one of the only people Katniss is sure she actually loves. She adores her sister. Her sister is adored by other people. And so she just can't let her go. She knows she won't survive this. She is too kind-hearted, and she's too frail and small and young, so she volunteers to take her place. Well, if that wasn't bad enough, Peeta, or Peeta Mellark, is chosen as the boy tribute. And why this is bad is because one day when their money pretty much all dried up and she was on the brink of starvation, she couldn't find anything to hunt, she couldn't find food. It was possible, or she thinks, that Peeta may have taken a beating from his mother, who seems a little mean and cruel. He purposely burned bread because they would throw it out to the pigs or whatever, the stuff that was bad. And he ended up throwing her bread when she was sitting in the rain crying because she could not find any food. And so that night he saved her and her family from starvation. And the thing about the Hunger Games is that only one tribute can come back, even though you are from the same district, and if you go, you and your partner could even be neighbors, you could be friends, but only one of you can come back. So not only does she have to face, that, like, how any of them has to face killing people in their own district, let alone other children, this boy she has to outlive or possibly kill saved her life at one time. So I would definitely say Peeta and Katniss are like the two main characters. And then you have Haymitch, who is their mentor. And whenever you win the Hunger Games, you mentor the other children from your district. And basically Haymitch is a drunk. And you want to dislike him, but you remember what these people go through, and you really can't blame them. And so her and Peeta end up going to the capital. Of course, she has a lot of thoughts about them because they have no thought or regard for human life. Their escort, Effie, she she's very capital. Like in the capital, they wear wigs and they dye their skin and they do all this stuff because they have money and all they have to do is sit around and be rich. There's a point in the book where she's talking about um, their story, and their inspiration of how they overcame, the barbarism of their districts, basically calling them barbarians. And, Katniss, in her thoughts and everything in the book, is talking about how dare a woman who is preparing two children for slaughter call people of their district barbarians. But she gets to her prep team, she sees how these people are, and she begins to realize that they really don't know any better. They've been raised into this. And then she meets Cinna, who is her stylist, and he is very different. He's very compassionate. He cares about her. He doesn't speak in the capital accent. He's not as extravagant in his looks. He really cares about her. So she begins to, realize that there is decent people there. Some of the other people that will come up is the president, who is President Snow, and he is basically the main villain throughout the whole trilogy. And that guy is just like evil. He is basically, I guess, more of a dictator, tyrant kind of thing than a president. Like, he is all for these games. He believes, and I think you guys see a little bit more of him in the movie, really. But even through her, this capital, they have no regard for people who are not of them. They basically see the poor as animals, as barbarians. And many of them have been raised into this. And then there are the career tributes, who are basically raised and brought up to prepare for these games, and some of them volunteer, not for their siblings, but for the glory of the games. And so that's where I think the themes come in. So one of the themes, or one of the messages, the meanings, is that money is used to divide people. So, as you know, as I've said, that the capital is very rich, but then there are the districts that are richer than other districts, such as the textile ones, and, I think District 2 and stuff like that, and basically the ones that make luxury items. They're capital favorites, and they look past the thing about them, training their children when they're really not supposed to. When Katniss volunteers for her sister, she is visited by people because you're allowed to have a few minutes before you go on the train to the capital. One of the people that comes to see her is the mayor's daughter, Madge. And earlier in the book, her friend Gail expresses dislike, sort of, for her because of the money she had, even though Katniss corrected him and said that's not her fault. So even within the districts themselves, people are separated because people, obviously, like the mayor's daughter, would have more money than the daughter of a widowed person who was married to a coal miner. But it's actually Madge, not the person at the black market, like in the movie, who actually gives Katniss the Mockingjay pin. And Katniss goes on to say that maybe they really are friends, as in talking to us, the reader. That, they always paired up for sporting events and such. And then, Like Peeta, he's the baker's son. They live in the merchant class, where she lives in the seam in District 12. So while Peeta is definitely not capital rich, he is seen as a little bit more wealthier than Katniss. So there's a divide, not just between the capital and the districts, but the people within the districts themselves, because they can't ever have them coming together again, and citing another rebellion. And then, um, if you haven't guessed by the idea, if you've seen the movie and whatever, and the plot, um, the names in the Hunger Games. So Katniss is actually a plant, and then her sister is Primrose. Uh, One of my other favorite characters that she teams up with in the book and in the movie is called Rue. She's from District 11. And like some of the career tributes, there are people named like Glimmer and Marvel and Clove and Cato. And in the capital, there's Cinna, Effie. The host of the Hunger Games, like, because it's televised, is Caesar Flickerman. And one of the people in her prep team is named Octavia. So, fighting to the death, Caesar, Octavia. It's not very hard to see the Roman influence there. And that kind of goes into the culture of Panem. Now, I think the author, Suzanne Collins, mentioned that in this future, most people are very mixed, like racially and stuff. So there's not a whole lot of like actual race, or religion, or culture that we know of today. But we see things differently within different districts and the capital, such as how people name their children, the merchant class versus the seam. She talks about how her mother and her sister have lighter eyes, and I think they were blonde and stuff like that, whereas the people in the seam are of darker skin and darker hair. And one can maybe contribute that to maybe a person or people of a particular ethnicity or culture, lived in this one place while the other ones lived in another place. Maybe years ago, maybe people, let's say from Northern Europe or whatever, brought something or shops from their culture years ago from Europe before Panem was Panem, or in the beginning areas or whatever. There's really not a whole lot of history in that, but like I said, the idea of a specific culture, or race, or religion really isn't mentioned in there, just kind of how people look. It's more social kind of things, such as the naming, how people get food, the capital versus the districts. One of the things I would have loved to see in the movie would be like school, because she does mention school, even though they're mainly taught about how the capital is so great and everything, and about coal mining because they are in District 12. She does mention sporting events and other things that, like she does with Madge or Mage or whatever her name is. I would have actually liked to have seen in the movie, like, what their school would look like, because that's very interesting. Because, like, I can't... Like, I've mentioned this in my reading of the book, because I am reading the chapters of the book, because I want to do book readings. Like, I was bullied really bad, like, in 7th grade, but even people I really disliked, I could not imagine sitting in school and watching on a big screen or whatever the hell they have there, And watching somebody that I knew die or kill somebody else. I just, I couldn't. So I would have really liked to see how school is there. Like she mentioned it in the book briefly, but I would have loved to see it on TV. So, what are some tropes? Well, I don't know if exactly they are tropes, but they're definitely there. So, the absent parent thing. So, this was brought up at some point, and like, I love The Fault in Our Stars. I do. I love it for certain reasons, but people are right. You don't take two American kids and let them go through Amsterdam by themselves or any other country. I'm sure parents from Amsterdam, from Holland, would not let their children run around the United States. Like, I live in Minnesota right now. They wouldn't let them run around by themselves. Or maybe they would. Maybe they have crappy parents too there. I don't know. But the thing is that in a lot of books, I haven't really noticed it so much in books until I joined BookTube or YouTube in general. But you do notice all the time, like in horror movies and stuff. Like, besides not turning on lights and everything else, there's like serial killers all around, and parents are just like leaving their kids by themselves. But in this story, the absent parent is not totally absent physically, but mentally. Like I said, Katniss and her sister were almost starving. And oh, the tesserae thing, I forgot to explain that. So the tesserae is a thing where if you put your name in the Reaping War times, like upping your chance to get picked for the Hunger Games, you get so many like rations of grain and food and everything. So Gale and Katniss, between their families, because Gale's father was also killed in the mining accident, because of that, their names were in there like 32, 40 something times, and out of all that, her sister got picked, and that's how that happened. And that's another thing that separates people, like why Gale didn't like Madge, or Mage, was because being the mayor's daughter, she didn't have to take Tesserae and risk that. So I almost forgot to explain that. So the thing about the absent parent is that, her mother, after her father died, went into this deep depression. And the thing is, that's a little bit more real, and even though it's bad, a little bit more understandable than you just letting your child run around a city in a different country, or leave them alone when a serial killer is on the loose. And then there are like the themes or the tropes of love and the love triangle and stuff. So Peeta, and not to spoil anything in the book, but it's not like a spoiler kind of thing. So in the interview, because they interview these children before they go off to die, they ask him if he's interested in a girl. And he ends up telling them that he does, but winning won't matter, and they ask why. And he said, because she came here with me. So Katniss feels guilty for never thanking Peeta for saving her life. And it's gotten worse because in order for her to go home to her family, he has to die. And now he has said on national television that he loves her. And then there is Gale back home, who has talked about families and getting married and such. But she has no interest in that. So the Hunger Games really doesn't have like a traditional love triangle. Like people madly like falling in love. Like, I hate to use Twilight as an example because I've only read the first book, and it's not like the worst series out there, but it wasn't the greatest either. So, how she falls in love with Edward for God knows what reason, and then Jacob is like totally jealous and such. It didn't work that way. Like, her and Gail were friends for years, and she knew Peeta from school, though she never directly spoke to him. And Gail never really came out and said that he loved her. He just kind of hinted it around that he would like a family one day, and talked about leaving and running away and such things like that. So I guess the love triangle is a little bit more settled. It's an almost love triangle. What else? And the thing is, she has really no interest in a family or a relationship. And I hate to say this, especially as a woman, but people are right, and even some female booktubers have talked about this, about how when there's a female character, she is kind of ridiculous. Like, she can defeat a bunch of men by herself, even if she hasn't been trained at all, and such things. And then you have, I don't know, your ultra feminazi people at times. But she really wasn't like that. She wasn't this, I can't be a strong woman and be a mother, I can't be a strong woman and have a relationship. No, she didn't want children because the government takes them and kills them for their entertainment and some sick, twisted punishment they think they should have. So I like that. I like that she knew that when she went into the games that there were going to be guys, boys, stronger than her. Like, but the girls had their own skills. The career districts are trained, and she knew, like, well, there are boys who are fed better and stronger. There are girls who know how to use weapons in ways that she does not. So she wasn't this egotistical character who thought she was better than everyone else, and she would become stronger than 1,000 men and everything, and like be skilled in weaponry and shit like that. No, she hunts with a bow and arrow. That's what she uses. And she uses what she knows, hunting. Unfortunately, knowing how to be hungry and everything and getting through that is how, she's able to get through this and everything. Going back kind of on the theme of love and love triangles and such, I kind of like how relationships sort of are represented. They seem very real to me in this book. So when they're in the cave in the Hunger Games themselves, they are basically asking each other questions, telling stories and such, and Peeta tells Katniss that his father wanted to marry his mother. And because she asked him when did he start liking her, and he said, when I was in kindergarten or something like that, my father pointed you out, and he goes, you see that girl? I wanted to marry her mother, but she ran off with a coal miner. And of course, Peeta, telling Katniss the story, asks, why would she want to do that when she could have had you? And I really honestly like what Peeta's father said about Katniss's father, and why Katniss's mother ended up with her father instead of Peeta's father, and why Peeta isn't her brother, basically. Because a lot of times it'll be, he was mysterious, he was handsome, he was just different. No. Actually, the quote I'm going to tell you now, I put it on my shirt because I love it. He said, because when he opened his mouth to sing, even the birds stopped to listen. And that is another reason that Peeta fell in love with Katniss, is because of how she sang and how she knew what they called the Valley Song and everything. And basically, that when she opened her mouth, it was over for him. He fell in love with her. I thought it was kind of cute. And the thing is that you get those little moments, such as the moment with the District 11 tribute, Rue. Um, she teams up with her and she becomes an ally with Rue because Rue reminds her so much of Prim. And even though the friendship doesn't last very long for reasons, you get that little glimmer of hope. There's little glimmers of hope throughout the book and everything. And yeah, it's just a fantastic book. It's, it touches on the themes of prejudice and poverty and how we use, money to divide people. Obviously, there are the themes of, like I said, ancient Rome and the gladiators. The ways they talk about how they, focus on how great the capital is in their schools and everything. That's kind of crap you hear coming from North Korea. And then President Snow is basically Hitler, really, or any of those other historical tyrants. So there's historical things, sort of, like symbolically. There's a whole culture thing within money and naming and such. The book just really touches on a whole lot of things. And like I said, I love the characters. She is flawed. She has her own prejudices. She learns. She grows. She is dedicated to her family. She does love her mother, and, but she has a hard time forgiving her and trusting her because of what she did. But at the same time, she knows in order to have left the merchant life, which is a little bit more richer, that she must have really loved her father. So there is, the theme of family and division and forgiveness and seeing through other people's eyes. If you have not read this book, I highly recommend it. At least the first book. The other two are good. I didn't hate Mockingjay, but it does have its problems. But definitely read the first book. And on a side note, if you want something a little more violent, but still has a good story, also check out Battle Royale, because I have a very long review for that one too. But anyways, thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked this video, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.